everybody. Raul here for Bass Musician Magazine, and today we have the extraordinary honor and pleasure of chatting with someone who needs no introduction, and yet I will. Award-winning actor, director, poet, and musician, Malcolm-Jamal Warner. Yay! The crowd roars. Malcolm, it is so great to have this opportunity to chat. I know you're extraordinarily busy, and this facet of your life is something that I don't think many people know about. And although you are extraordinarily accomplished musician, but everybody knows about all the acting stuff and all that. But going all the way back to the past, how did you get started in music, and particularly on bass?
So I've always been interested in music. It's always been a love of mine. Like every other kid growing up in the '80s, I fancied myself a rapper. Yeah, and because I've always been, I was actually a poet before I was an actor, so I was always writing poetry, and it turned out that eventually I realized I was a better poet than a rapper. But I had always had drum machines and 4-track machines in my bedroom or dressing room, but it really wasn't until I was about 26 when I decided to pick up an instrument and actually study the language of music. When I became a musician, is kind of where things started to kind of, take off for me. I went to MI.
Mm-hmm.
It was 96. I picked up my first bass in 96. I was doing a series for UPN, Malcolm and Eddie. And during a hiatus, I went to MI, Musicians Institute, and I took this 10-week music intensive, because that's all the time I had during my break, during my hiatus.
Yeah.
I had only been playing bass for a year. So I go to MI, I'm taking jazz improv from Todd Johnson, right? I'm in it. And I was in way over my head, but it was really what I needed to kind of kickstart me, into really understanding understanding the process and understanding the wealth of information and knowledge in terms of, again, studying the language, as opposed to, I didn't really want to be one of those. I didn't want to be a corny actor who's just, decides to pick up the music, right? So just from the onset, there was an approach that I wanted to be able to understand music as a language and do the work to take it seriously, so I could be taken seriously by, real musicians.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And what drew you particularly to bass? Because again, you've got a wide range of possible voices.
Sure. So I like to say bass picked me. So like when I was a kid, I was 7 years old. I got my first record player, and the first record I stole from my mother's collection was Graham Central Station. Right? The first record I bought with my own money was Toto 4, that album.
There we go.
When Luther Vandross's album first came out, that album affected my life so much. And I didn't realize until after, picking up the bass, that Marcus Miller was all over that record.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I had all of these, again, so I say bass picked me because as a kid, that's the instrument that I gravitated toward. But when I decided to pick up an instrument, because I was working for UPN and was frustrated with that gig, I was like, I need to pick up an instrument, but I need to do something that I'm not going to turn into a career, because acting started out as a hobby, became a career. Mm-hmm. Directing started out as a hobby, became a career. So I figured if I picked up an instrument, it'll be a great hobby. It won't turn into a career.
Mm-hmm.
I'll never record a record. I'll never start a band. I'll just practice scales to a metronome in my dressing room.
Yeah.
To kind of zen out when I needed to. And then, that didn't last for long. But when I picked bass, at the time I figured, well, I won't have to deal with chords and stuff like piano and guitar. Like I heard that if I just pick up a bass, I could just play roots and I could get by.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I started studying language and studying to be a real bass player, and realized the bass player has to know. You have to know chords. You have to know progressions. You have to know all of that. To be an effective bass player.
Indeed.
Like I love Sting. Sting says, a chord is not a chord until I play the notes.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, you're mentioning, certainly some heavy hitters. I mean, Larry Graham, Marcus Miller. Are these your inspiration musically? The people that you listen to that have inspired you to play?
Yeah, Larry Graham, Marcus, Ron Carter, Leon Hubbard from the Roots. Because I was, I've been a poet my entire life. Before I picked up the bass, because again, I picked the bass at 26. So before I picked up the bass, I was heavy in the spoken word world. I was really active in the resurgence of the underground spoken word movement in LA, starting back like 93. And when I heard the Roots' first album, or really second album, Do You Want More? There's a hidden track at the end of that album with Ursula Rucker, the poet. And when I heard that, it was like I realized, I could incorporate the poetry and the music. Like there's a lane for that. And so that really excited me because when I first started playing, I came out of MI and then I started a band immediately because I realized that would be the only way I was really going to practice and really develop. Because I realized that playing scales to a metronome in my dressing room was not holding my interest.
Yeah.
So I started a band, and even in LA, you doing the club circuit, everybody else can make a mistake, right? And the crowd won't necessarily know. But the bass player makes a mistake, everybody's gonna know. So yeah. I really put myself in a position to make me practice, just make me develop at a much faster pace than I would have otherwise.
Gotcha.
But when I started the band, I wanted to keep the music separate from the poetry.
Mm-hmm.
But when you do club gigs, after paying everybody, after having done, print and advertising, and I would have a videographer, I was literally coming out of pocket like $200-$300 every gig. So, again, go back to the Roots and Ursula Rucker, I realized, well, you know what? If I record a CD back, that shows you how long ago this was, right?
Yeah.
If I have a CD to sell after my shows, then I won't necessarily feel like I'm coming out of pocket, every gig.
Mm-hmm.
But I had no original material because, with my band, we were doing covers. Like we would do, like in one show, we would go from Living Colour to Coltrane, and a couple in a blues tune in between. So in order to record original material, in order to sell a CD, I had to record original material. So that's what really got me into the recording aspect,
mm-hmm.
and really it put me in a front man role. Because when I started the band, I didn't want to be the front man. I wanted to be back with the bass player.
Yeah.
My sax player sang. I had a female vocalist, and I'm doing these gigs. But I realized that people were not coming to my show to see me in the back with the drummer. So in order to sell music, I had to man up.
Yeah.
And accept the responsibility of being the front person. And once I stepped up to that, that's really when the music really started to take off for me. Because I found my own niche, if you will, my own niche, if you will.
Nice. Yeah. Well, and you have so far 4 albums because you say you needed to make a CD. You're up to 4. Selfless. Actually, I'll go in order. The Miles Long mixtape and Love and Other Social Issues, Selfless, and most recently, Hiding in Plain View. And there's certainly the unique blend of your poetry and the music. I'm finding that in all of these albums, So, and there's definitely a deep social message because, again, the poetry side, and of course, you have the great advantage is, I think, from your acting side, you've got absolutely amazing diction. So everything is just so crystal clear.
Sure, appreciate that.
Well, if you look back, there's been some amazing rock acts. One of my favorites, Fleetwood Mac. But there's so unintelligible lyrics of Stevie Nicks. I'm like, for the longest time, I thought the song was just like a one-winged duck. So I didn't know what was going on there. But
point taken. Yeah, no,
we can understand everything you're saying. But the key thing is it's deep. It's deep material, you know. So tell us a little bit about that whole process.
Sure. Well, like I said, I've been a poet my entire life. My dad went to Lincoln University with Gil Scott-Heron and Brian Jackson. And my dad went to Lincoln University because Langston Hughes went to Lincoln University. So I came out of the womb listening to Gil Scott and Brian and The Last Poets. And my father was giving me, as a kid, one of my favorite books was Poems on the Life and Death of Malcolm X. My dad named me after Malcolm X and Ahmad Jamal. So again, the poetry and the music has always been, a part of me. And with the social content, I think one of the key turning points for me was, I spent, again, my growing up going to schools, right, speaking to kids, speaking at assemblies, speaking at church organizations, and spreading messages of, positivity and self-accountability and self-responsibility to young people. But it got to a point where I realized that those messages were coming off corny because these kids wanted to hear from Snoop Dogg and Biggie Smalls. So my messages were not really coming through. And then I hit a turning point where I realized that with the poetry and the spoken word platform, that there was a platform where I could get my messages, so I could spread my messages through the spoken word in a manner that young people would actually be able to receive. So I realized that, the messages in the spoken word and with the music, that the music had to, have a kind of vibe that people would, want to hear the poetry, more than once, but also where the music would not get in the way of the poetry. And, of course, as a bass player, we always want to show, we want to put fills in every fourth bar and show chops. But in that process, the bass player I didn't mention was Paul Denman.
Okay.
So because I think he's always a master class in pocket. Right? You don't hear a whole lot of fills, but all of those Sade songs, they all resonate. So he was a big influence in terms of restraint.
Okay.
Because again, being known as an actor, there are always times where I want to be able to show, no, but really I can play bass. So, Paul Denman really, again, was just a big influence. It just play the pocket.
Yeah.
And, the pocket was so important, again, so the poetry could have the effect that I really needed.
Exactly.
My bass playing was not going to affect young people as much as I knew the poetry would.
There you go. Well, I think one of the important parts, and at least particularly for me, I feel the music more. And so I'm a lot of times I lose lyrics. They're I don't even realize the lyrics are there until later on. And I'll go, wow, there were some really great lyrics here, but it was the music that got me like right here in the chest. And so I think you found a really great balance of hitting here with the bass, but hitting here with the spoken word simultaneously, so you can be retained with both of these factors, So that's the nice balance there.
Yeah. My thing was always I want the music to make you want to come back.
Yes.
To hear the message.
There we go. Well, and as we're speaking of music and sound, and I can't help but to notice you've got a little bit of gear behind you. Let's talk a little bit about gear. How are you getting your sound? What are you playing on?
Right now I'm playing Anaconda, which is Jamal Nichols, who plays for Gregory Porter, turned me on to Anaconda. I love the way the bass feels. I love the tone that I get out of them. But, I've got of course I have a collection of basses. But, the Anaconda is really my main axe. I was in LA a couple of weeks ago, and I'm in that place of, when you're itching for a new instrument. But we've been on this actor strike for quite some time. So I live in Atlanta, but I went back to LA and I went to my storage unit, and I went bass shopping in my public storage unit.
There you go.
And I pulled out this F bass that I used to really love, and then I pulled out this Padula fretless.
Oh, wow.
That I literally have not played in like 20 years. And I brought those basses back with me. So the Anaconda are my main basses, but I'm playing this Padula fretless a lot lately since I've been back.
Nice. Well, and you double up, you play upright as well.
Yeah, so I have played upright. I've been living in Atlanta for about 5.5 years now, because I just finished the show The Resident on Fox and Hulu. I hadn't planned on being out here this long, so all of my uprights are in storage. So
gotcha.
I've not played upright in about 5.5 years. So I'm not quite sure if I still qualify.
Well, there are certainly, things will translate. What I find is there's really a small handful of people that are really highly proficient on both electric and upright. Stanley Clark, John Patitucci, a lot of these. Jamal Nichols, there you go. That they're equally fluid on both of the instruments. And whereas I remember I talked to Reggie Workman, and bless his heart, super upright player. But he's the first one that said they tried to get him to play electric, and he gave it a little try, and he said, no, I'm going to let Stanley and Victor and those guys, they can have that. They do that. I'm just going to stick with my upright, So it has its place, but when you find your sweet spot, and certainly an instrument like Padula, seeing that they're no longer producing any instruments at all, that those are just absolutely precious if you've got your hands on one.
It was so interesting. I haven't played in about 20 years, and I came back and I had my bass to get set up, and Neil was on the Padula. He was like, this doesn't need much work at all. He said, I'll do a little bit on the intonation, but it's all good. Yeah. And I literally sat for about 20 years.
Wow.
So shout out to Padula.
There we go. Yeah, he makes some amazing instruments. I've talked to a lot of the players, and they just play them hard, and they hold up really well. And in addition to that, amplification-wise, strings, what else are you playing with?
I've been playing GK for probably about 12, 15 years. Yeah, those Gallon Kruger, they've always been good to me. But I guess about 12 years ago I started playing the MB 500, and I played through a 210, and because I don't because I'm not gigging all the time, that rig just really works for me. Like when I first started playing bass, when I first started the band and I was out gigging, I had the Aguilar 60-pound power amp, right? I had acoustic audio. I had like a 15 and 210s. I had my upright. I had my 5-string.
Oh my gosh!
And no roadie. Like I was just happy to be gigging. So I was packing all this stuff in my truck, just happy. I went through Aguilar, Bag-In, and I just got to a point where when GK came out, with the small heads, now I have an 800. But when they first came out, I was like, this is more practical.
Absolutely.
Because I'm not 20-something anymore, and just the sound just really works for me. And what I found was the combination of GK gear and the Anaconda. Like wherever I go, people may comment on my tone.
Gotcha.
Which has been really cool, because I just started. About 3 or 4 months ago, I started detuning my bass. Like I play 5-string, so I detune everything a whole step, and it's changed my bass playing in such a profound way.
Nice, very nice.
Yeah. It's been really good. It's changed. It's made me I think before, because so much of my playing has been so analytical and pattern based, because I think because when I started my band immediately after a 10-week intensive at MI, my focus had always been, I need to at least have the theory down so I could do these shows and so I can communicate with other musicians.
Yeah.
So the theory for me has always been the hack for not really developing my ear. Right? So, a guitar player can, we find a lick. And so I use this example because it was key for me in a rehearsal. We're playing, guitar player, found this lick, and we're going to all play it in unison. And it was a great lick, but I couldn't quite catch it. And he's like, no, it's just this. And he's playing, and I can't really hear it. And the keyboard player, MD, says it's a major pentatonic started from the fifth below. Like, oh, okay. So the hack for developing my ear has always been the theory. So when I detuned my bass, it made me be more mindful of what I was playing, and it made me be more intentional with what I'm playing, because suddenly everything had become about sound and feel. And it's really, like I said, it's had a significant, profound impact on the way I play now. And that was literally 3-4 months ago. So I'm in this process of even finding just more. The rabbit hole is so deep.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah. No, you got room in there. There's plenty of space you can go.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Well, and you've also, because you'd mentioned your first group, but I know you've played with some other groups as well, to mention Biological Misfits.
Yeah.
And Miles Long, doing jazz and funk, and picking up other gigs here and there. It's kind of fun.
Miles Long is my band. So for your viewers, if you want to hear any of my music, if you just type in my name on any streaming sites, you'll get features and collaborations that I've done with other people. But in order to hear my music and my albums, it's listed as Malcolm-Jamal Warner's Miles Long.
Okay.
And, I started my band in 98, so before streaming services. I didn't realize that now everything I put out, if I want it to be on the same artist page, it's got to be Malcolm-Jamal Warner's Miles Long. So Miles is my band, and it's it's jazz funk spoken word. It's what I've been doing, since 98. Being here in Atlanta, which is a great music community, and I've cats that I've played with, for 20 years. Every time I've come to Atlanta or play anywhere in the southern region, there are a group of cats who are my first call cats. But now being here for 5.5 years, I've really been welcomed in a beautiful way by the Atlanta music community. And I play I play my Miles Long material here with Biological Misfits. Our main gig is this. We got the jazz and Tribe Called Quest. So it's a Tribe Called Quest tribute band, but we play not just the Tribe hits, but we also play the original songs they sampled from. So it becomes this really wonderful live hip hop, soul, funk kind of vibe. So we'll go into Red Clay. We go from Red Clay into the Tribe hit, or we go from Lou Reed to the Tribe hit. We'll go from Minnie Riperton. So we really agree the all history, and we really get to delve in all the aspects and pull from the different genres of music that Tribe Called Quest obviously is known for, with their music and their sometimes obscure samples. So that's the main gig we do as the Biological Misfits. And then the frontman in that band is Dashiell Smith, incredible trumpet player. He plays for Roy Ayers, when they go on the road. But Dashiell plays trumpet. He's a vocalist. He's an MC. So he's really the frontman of that band because he's playing trumpet. He's, he and I trade Q-Tip and Fife's verses. So I spent half of the show doing the verses with Dashiell, and the other half of the show I trade bass duties with Kyrie Simmons, who is the MD.
Nice.
So there's that band, and then I also play bass for the show. We do a straight funk set. We do funk leg, we do Prince, Janet, Wolf, Roy Ayers material. So we do that, and then I do Miles Long. So these three outfits really keep me quite busy. And then the first Thursday of every month, we do this really dope jam session out in Grant Park where, there's no set list, there's no pre-discussed, what songs we're going to play. We just go. And the amazing thing about that show is we also have a DJ, DJ LV, who, because we're all going just from the top of the dome and just feeling the vibe, what he has to do as a DJ, when we're playing, he hears something, so he has to not only, with whatever he's playing, he has to not only match our tempo, he has to match our pitch.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's it's a really magical thing because we'll come up with something, we'll be playing one thing, and he'll end up playing an a cappella of something completely different, right? But it just fits over what we're doing. So that's a really magical show, and to see, just how LV gets down as a DJ musician, it's a really powerful set that we do the first Thursday of every month. So that's the thing that really keeps me on my toes.
Gotcha. Well, and as you're speaking of so much stuff, it sounds like you're in a constant groove, but what are your plans for the future, musically speaking? Because I know you'll be doing all kinds of other acting and directing and other stuff.
Yeah, so I'm working on another album. My fourth album, Hiding in Plain View, was nominated for a Grammy last year. And this year, I did not have anything to submit, but there's an album that I featured on as a poet that was nominated. And then there was another album on which I produced a track that got nominated as well.
Nice.
So now, it's like, okay, well, I gotta, get my next record out. So, I'm working on that. And, for me, like, I love just being able to gig because, my livelihood obviously is dependent upon my acting side. Mm-hmm. So there's always I'm always trying to find the balance, because I tell people all the time that the amount of time, energy, focus, passion, commitment just to be an okay musician, right, is a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I spend a lot of time, just trying to maintain okay musician status. If I can get above that, cool. But it gives me, and again, as someone whose livelihood does not depend on my music gigs,
mm-hmm.
I have more of an appreciation and respect for musicians than words can express. Again, because I know how much work I put in just to be able to maintain where I am. Forget about being great, right? So there's always that balance that I'm trying to find, because again, when I started bass, I was single.
Yeah.
Right. So being able to, go do gigs and just do whatever as a single man, I'm married with a kid now. So there are other responsibilities that I have. So I'm just in a constant flux of trying to keep things balanced. So I would, I want to be able to always be in a position where, I can work and then I can still do music.
Mm-hmm.
I've always said that the music has not yet been an income generating vehicle for me,
mm-hmm.
but I'm looking to change that energy.
There you go. Well, and it is wonderful that you can, I think, with you not having to depend on the commerciality of it,
yeah.
You're able to maintain also a level of purity and, staying focused on the message and what's important with the music. Yeah. You're not necessarily just trying to see what will sell quickly and turn around. And power to folks that do that, but you're not, hammering out a jingle here to see if they'll take it or doing something else like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And thank you for that, because that's the blessing of my livelihood not being dependent upon my music, because it allows me to be as refreshingly honest and passionate, that whose livelihood is dependent upon their music, and the politics of what the music business is.
Oh yeah.
Don't necessarily get to have that lane. So again, thank you for that, because that's the blessing of what I do musically, that I have to just keep reminding myself of that. So thank you for that reminder.
There we go. Well, and if people want to stay on top of what you're doing, because I know there's so much more great things to come, where's the best place for them to look?
The best place right now is my Instagram, and that's at Malcolm-Jamal Warner. I'm in the process of redeveloping my website because it's kind of old. But in terms of the current things that I post, from the acting side to the music side, Instagram is really the best place. My Facebook is synced to my Instagram, so I guess Facebook and Instagram. I do handle my own account, so I don't necessarily post every day. I don't necessarily, check my comments every day, but I do handle my own account. So, so please follow me. Please leave comments. I do comment back. It's just not necessarily with the frequency that other people do. Other people who have the time, or who have people who handle their social media accounts for them.
There we go. Well, as busy as you are, I am impressed that you're actually able to answer at all.
It's work. I say social media is like a part-time job that doesn't pay.
Oh man, it's a necessary evil. What can I say? So Anyway, Malcolm, we appreciate you taking time from your busy schedule, sharing your journey with us, your music, the spoken word. We definitely wish you much continued success. Folks, you've seen him here on Bass Musician Magazine, Malcolm-Jamal Warner.
Thank you, brother.